Let me turn to Chad Holliday now and get the perspective of a huge global enterprise with manufacturing and service and business operations all over the world. Chad, DuPont was one of the pioneers and really early leaders in what became known and still is known as integrated safety management. And we know that this improved the safety of your operations in the industry, but it also had huge productivity gains. So could you share a little bit with us how you've built on that and how DuPont now is moving into this whole set of business processes and high-level importance on integrated risk management to be, again, a resilient enterprise?
Thanks so much. I think there's two things from our experience in the last 10 years that I believe will be useful to folks here today. First is we saw security needing to take a different level of importance. Our first question is that's one more thing we have to ask our people to do, and more difficult to understand because you're dealing with the more random event, an event that you're not sure is going to happen. So we searched for what are we already doing in our company that we could tie that to, and that was safety. It's really back to our founder over 200 years ago. We were making black powder that we understood safety was very important. So that was ingrained in the DNA of our company. So we made security a part of safety, not a separate thing. And we believe that immediately translated to our people about what they had to do, and I wouldn't change that today. Even though we put in different processes, we bring security up, we tied it to what's going on. The lesson I think for other companies are think of what your people already value, how can you link it to that rather than trying to make it a thing over on its side. Very much what Jim was talking about. If it's stovepiped individual things, it won't have the same power, build power. The second from our experience I think would be useful to you is be a learning organization, whether you're a university, a government agency, a for-profit company. And the example for us there was around the two hurricanes. When Katrina hit, it was the most devastating natural disaster that ever faced our company. We depleted our emergency resources very quickly, both materials and people. But the question we started asking about 48 hours after Katrina is, what about the next one? And how can we be better prepared for the next one when it hits, even if it's very soon? We had no idea it would be a matter of weeks before the second one would hit. But indeed, we were better prepared for Rita than we were Katrina, even though we still had over half our resources deployed to the Louisiana, Mississippi area. So I think if organizations can immediately think about every one of these as a real learning opportunity, it's a great example.
Chad, just a follow-up question. If you think a little bit about the complexity of your global supply chain, which again is all over the world, both in terms of production and how these products are built and integrated, is there anything particularly of concern as you invest and operate all over the world, and how can technology, IT technology, monitoring some of these things help in achieving the resiliency that you need?
Well, I believe firmly in what the report says and the multiple examples of if you have fundamentally solid, robust processes, they can deal with anything that can come up. And what we've seen in our experience, we have maybe one real, what we call crisis situation where we pull our crisis team together every year, and we have multiple drills. What I can say very clearly is we've never drilled for the right thing. And my guess is we never will. But if we get the right fundamental processes in place, we find they can deal with almost anything that comes up. And I think that's the key. And those processes are from training of people to your absolute systems and where you locate your data centers, and can go on and on.
Thank you. Well, now we've heard from a leading global enterprise. Let's turn to the world of universities. And of course, universities educating young people, doing research, but they are also huge, complex organizations, businesses, revenue streams, all sorts of issues that also are relevant to corporations as well. And Karen, Ohio State may really be one of the first universities to have created an actual center for resilience, and we'd like to hear a little bit about that, but also if you'd be willing to share with us during your tenure, were there issues where you really had to pull together these types of integrated processes to handle something that had a potential huge impact on the viability and business of your university.
Good. Let me start with the second part first, and then I'll go back to the center and finish up with that. I was really struck, Deborah, when you were talking that the issues that companies face are really no different than the issues that universities face. We all have the same competitiveness issues. We all have the same threats from the environment. We all have situations of siloism, if there's such a word. We just made one up, where we need to work together. And I'm going to talk about the center as being a nice way to break down those kinds of silos and doing a lot of interdisciplinary work. But I was just thinking, the kinds of things, the threats, one only has to look at Virginia Tech to see what a threat is that we all have. It could have been any university, and we all stopped and said, how would we respond at the end of that? I think of the pandemic situation that faces universities in the same way, and in fact, for us to close down if we had a pandemic, how would we do that? And we've done a great deal of planning for that, and we have had tabletop exercises, and we have the critical people, and we talk about what happens at stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So all of that kind of planning is underway. And then I think about the weather kinds of things. We're not sitting in hurricane zone, but we are in tornado country, and one of them was a very real threat to us, is what we call the flood that never was. And that was where we had a large river that comes right through the campus, the Olentangy River, and for some reason our power plant sits right on the edge of this river. And we were threatened with the river overflowing and the floodgates bursting so that all of this would be flooded. And we immediately worked on how do we manage that kind of a situation and what are the different steps to do. So all of these things come to us, and in fact, like most companies, we also have an enterprise risk management system where we ask the right questions, or we hope we're asking the right questions. What do we do if this happens, and what do we do if this happens? Because all across the university, these threats are really enormous to us, and the kinds of things that we have to worry about. We have an enterprise risk management manager. And then I thought about security. As you were mentioning security, many universities, ours included, have had break-ins to our computer systems and stealing of data. In fact, the whole state of Ohio has just experienced an enormous break-in in computer systems, or information being stolen. So all of these things are things that we manage, we work on, and we hope we're prepared for. You really quite never know until they happen, but very much the same kinds of situations, and very important. For us, we're talking about 100,000 people, so we are like a very large corporation, and with a budget of about $3.8 billion. So there are a lot of risks that are very important to mitigate against, and something that we really work on all the time. Center for Resilience is really, I think, very innovative and very, very worthwhile. And I think one of the co-directors is here. Am I correct? If you are, would you raise your hand? No? I saw his name on the list that he was going to be here. Dr. Bakshi is one of our co-directors of the center. It was founded in 2004, and it was founded with the idea of being a multidisciplinary center that brought together several of the colleges, again, getting away from the stovepipes, brought in engineering in a new area of engineering resilience. But it brought in engineering, mathematical and physical sciences, folks in psychology and sociology, in agriculture, in business, of course, to all think about how is it that you engineer systems, or how do you design systems for industry that take into account the human factors, the organizational factors, the environmental factors, so that industry can survive and actually thrive and move forward competitively and grow in the face of a changing environment. That's the whole goal of the center. And what they do, they came together to do, first of all, research. It's a research-based organization that has contracts with government. They've done a number of studies they worked with NASA in terms of shuttle missions, and how do you think about all of the factors that you need to put together, organizational, human, and process factors. How do you manufacture, how do you put in place processes, and how do you put products in place that are flexible, that can adapt to problems as they arise.